Hello, hello. Thanks for asking me. Thank you. I don't know about visionary. I came in quite late on the flight last night, so maybe I'm still having visions. But we'll see. I wanted to talk to you briefly today about one intervention, but an intervention in part. Are we okay? In part of a much bigger project, a 20-year ongoing project. And I live in a city and in a neighbourhood that has got constant construction, constant building, constant change happening in it. And sometimes that's like a siege for not only the communities, but for the businesses trying to operate in the area. And I'm interested in the barriers that we create, or more like the opportunities we miss in these sort of processes, and I'm able to explore that through my institution. But here's a couple of examples to start with of what's gone wrong. They're all things that have appeared in my neighbourhood over the last few years. This was 2 for 1. They didn't like the building. They weren't very keen on the Olympic Games either, so they got it in. Especially in areas of huge change and urban regeneration, you know, there's sort of narratives of resistance. Letitia mentioned Kreuzberg earlier. That's a very good example of the BMW Guggenheim Lab and what happened there. There's people make their own sense of it, and where a narrative excludes people from the community and the public, then they'll make their own interventions into it. So I think it's incredibly important that we connect institutions and developments from beginning to end and in between, with stakeholders, with communities, with the public. And certainly at an institution like Tate Modern, we've learnt this lesson from the very start, before we even redeveloped the building. I'm not going to go through all of this. A lot of you will have been there. Opened in 2000, most popular museum of modern art in the world, 5 million visitors, 12 million people coming into the area, a huge catalyst for change, good and for bad, in and around the area. And I think one of the key successes we've had is that we're in a constant dialogue and narrative with the public and the communities around us. So now we're moving into the second stage of that development, where we've got a 220 million extension. It's a physical expansion to the south, also philosophical. To the south of Tate Modern, away from the river, are some of the most marginalised communities in Europe, and we want to connect up with them both economically and through the reach of the institution. And that relies on continued and new dialogues and partnerships. We're taking the oil tanks that were part of the original power station, we're converting them, we have converted them, and then we're building a new building above that. So it's a massive construction project, 6 years on site, huge area of the land cordoned off from the public. It's got a big marshalling yard behind it. We've seen all of that today, hundreds of people working on the project. And this will be the result in the end. In 2016, we'll have this museum, and I was struck by Anna-Mika was speaking about Berlin before. This is designed to be an antithesis to the glass tower, to the corporate city. It's a brick-veiled building which will keep culture at the centre of this part of the city. But more than that, it's going to be a museum for the 21st century, a place for art, a place for learning, a place for shopping, a place for eating, a place of congregation, an open space, a democratic space, and a space that links the city and the museum, a sort of interstitial space in our public realm. So we've wanted to extend all of those principles into the construction programme. And in planning the space, we've got all the usual things, community and public advisory groups, communication strategies, but we were just looking at the site at the start and thought there's an opportunity here to create something different. There's no need for us to have the barrier so far into the public realm. And we started to think about how could we bring these trees back into the public domain and create a park and create some conversation between the construction site and the public. So we commissioned Ivan and Heather Morrison, who are sort of artists come architects, and started to think about creating a pocket park and a public park, but not just a park or a pop-up space, somewhere that could start the dialogue that we want to have about what the museum can and will be with the public. So this is the maquette that we came up with to actually take the hoarding line right back, create a sculptural piece and create a pop-up public park. This is the start of the construction of it. It happened over a month. It's about a £60,000, what's that, 100,000 Canadian dollar project, using wherever possible recycled material. So this is the wooden cobbles that make up part of the street from recycled material, engaging the construction workers on the site as a social asset, as a community programme to come and help us. So this concrete bench, which you'll see later on, was laid and paid for by the construction companies, who saw it as a good thing to be doing as part of their community values. You see the cobbled path emerging there and starting to bring these trees back into the public realm. It's an architectural piece. It's called The Skirt of the Black Mouth. It comes from a science fiction novel called Hot House. And I was interested in something that Barry was saying earlier on. One of the things this is designed to do, it's at angles. It disrupts the rigid grid of the city, which he was interestingly saying, you know, some of these blank walls cause us a disturbance. Well, this piece is supposed to play with all of that. So there you see some of the angles as we start to erect it. This is the artist, or one half of the artist. All this material has been burnt and charcoaled on the vents behind. Again, you start to see the return of the public space. It's not huge, but it makes a massive difference between the interaction between the place and the community. Once it was open, we left it for a few days, and the public began to populate it and use it in their own way, to eat their lunch, to interact, to meet friends. And it's developed as a social space. It's being used, there's a lot of workers in the area using it every day. And interestingly, people used it from the beginning as if it has always been there. They just adopted it as a space. And this is this idea, somebody earlier said, you know, you can't see in a construction site, we don't want them to see it. Well, I do. I want this visibility, I want this dialogue between a public institution, what's happening behind the fence, and what's happening on the other side. So it's about democracy, it's about dialogue, it's about transparency, but it's done in a sculptural and artistic form. It's just quite important to say, I think, that this is one project, one small project, but it's part of a much bigger strategy that we've been adopting, a public realm and an urban strategy across the area. It's called the Bankside Urban Forest. It's set up as an anti-master plan. It is not a master plan. I think master plans are for the 20th century. We need to look at new models of planning cities. So it's values. It's about a set of values, about a set of aspirations, and building your public realm, your interventions, and your public space around that. It's organic, but it's got principles. So this is one key element in a much bigger strategy in the city. It also has a nighttime use. This is not lightsabers for teenagers to do Star Wars reenactment. It's actually bespoke lighting that comes with the site, and it gives us a flexibility, so we're programming it in the day and in the night. This was a music event that we held, and we've tested that a bit like what Sharon was talking about in Times Square. You know, we've tested it with different programs over the last year. Artist interventions. This is the art fortune cookies that were being tied to the trees in the park. A set of conversations where we bring artists together to talk to people just as they're passing by the spaces. And you'll spot there the chairs. They were, we'll totally admit it, we stole them from Times Squares and Bryant Park. We stole their idea and brought it over. We like to appropriate things from all over the world, and thank you for some of the ideas to do. Pardon? It's a French design chair, 2 in 1, fantastic. And a venue for music and for the community. We have DJs, but we also have community music. We've commissioned a pop-up each year in the space, so we're encouraging new architects to think about using the space. This is a 3D gin bar, so it was cutting edge. It was made in the shape of a traditional gin bar, but all the ornate carvings were being done by 3D printing and were added during the duration of the project. And obviously it was very functional because all our staff could go for a drink there after work. So it's extending the idea of the social, I think. that we're doing with this space. We're having fun with it. We've got a new installation this year, which is actually an oven. I won't show the video now because I don't think we've got enough time. And the idea there is that we're bringing different communities, different businesses, different people from across the city together and engaging in an exercise around cooking, because we've created an oven there. Architects have created an oven which is not dissimilar to the chimney of the original power station. People come together, they cook, they literally sit down and break bread together, and they start a dialogue and a discourse. And that's really what this is for me. It's, as I say, it's a one small project, but it's a rehearsal of many of the things that I want to see happen in this museum when it's complete. It's about dialogue, it's about congregation, it's about bringing people together, it's about active. The old days of the museum as a place you went to receive wisdom from the curators is long gone. It's about active discussion and participation now. So it's a project in itself, but it's a model for what we want to do in the future. Thank you.